Jerry,
Yes.
picture it.
Okay.
It's a dusty Mississippi crossroads. It's midnight. You and your guitar are the only things in sight until someone joins you and a deal is struck. Overnight, you go from a busker to the world's very first rock star, and you will go on to influence every musician that comes after you. Because what we're going to be talking about today is the idea that maybe talent isn't learned and success isn't earned, but both can be traded. And as it turns out, this may not be an exercise in imagination, but a very true story from the 1930s. Also, glad that background reduction is going to get rid of Radley deciding to make the first sound of the night.
We welcome Radley.
So we're going to talk about Crossroads demons.
Crossroads demons.
Yeah, girl. But first, we're going to talk about Crossroads.
Okay.
Because dipping into your bag a little bit, we're going to talk folklore. For centuries, crossroads have been thought to represent a sort of liminal space, which keeps coming up for us, between worlds, and a site where supernatural energy and experience is just stronger. If you buy into the idea of ley lines and the power ley lines can have, it's a very similar sort of vortex.
Could you tell the audience what ley lines are?
I think the idea is that they're like magnetic lines in the earth.
This first came up when we were talking about the Appalachian Trail.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not really a portal per se, but just liminal space. Because as far as liminality goes, it's kind of nowhere. So it's
still a thing.
It's
so
like
somewhere.
It's like somewhere, but also nowhere. Liminal. So not a here or a there, but kind of that between state of being. So crossroads have always carried weight because going back even to Greek mythology, they were tied to both Hecate and Hermes, but in very different ways. Because Hermes shows up as the guide, the traveler's protector, marked by those Herm pillars that you'll still see like along the road. Hecate, though, is where things get a little bit more ritualistic. She's literally the goddess of the crossroads.
Cool.
And people left offerings called suppers of Hecate at these intersections during the new moon. Her later three-formed depictions even mirror the structure of a three-way crossing.
So like 1, 2, 3. Like this? 1, 2, 3.
I have a picture that if I were more tech savvy, I would just show you now. But instead, I'll just, when it's on YouTube, people will see it there. But you're right. It's her in the front, her in both sides.
Here.
There you go. And this idea doesn't stop with the Greeks, because by the 11th century, even figures like Mercury and later Odin were said to receive offerings at crossroads.
Interesting.
Odin famously also gets offerings under trees because he's kind of the original Santa. So, FYI. In medieval times, because we're still going, surprise, surprise, crossroads get a little bit darker. And they were often used to bury criminals and people who died by suicide, partly because these spaces marked the edge of a community, and partly because there's this belief that these intersecting roads would confuse restless spirits.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Crossroads were also common sites for punishment and execution, which reinforced the idea that those buried there existed both outside of law and society.
Whoa.
Okay. So this practice dates back all the way to Anglo-Saxon times and wasn't actually abolished until 1823, which just makes me think, like, how many times have we been at a crossroads and there are just like people underneath us?
Oh.
What's interesting is that this wasn't always seen as dishonorable. At one point, crossroad burials were considered second only to church grounds for Christians.
What? When?
It had to be sometime in between those dates I just gave you.
We'll know in a little bit here. We'll find out for you.
But over time, that shifted and they became more associated with exclusion and unease. So that probably predated when they started doing it for criminals.
I see. Okay. Wow, that's so interesting. Okay.
So that uneasy energy carries into folklore because in Western traditions, crossroads are often described as places where you can summon a devil or a demon to make a deal. By the 19th century, that fear was still very much alive. In Transylvanian superstitions, crossroads are described as places people actively avoided.
How do you avoid a crossroad?
I guess you would have to really extend your trip. I don't know. Maybe you just couldn't walk through it.
Okay.
There are even accounts of Romanian rituals where someone could summon a demon by drawing a circle, offering a copper coin, and reciting an incantation at a crossroads.
Is this how we got roundabouts?
Oh my God. Honestly. The next time I take a roundabout, I'm just going to like throw a coin out my window. Just see what happens.
See if you summon the devil.
That's so funny. So different cultures, same instinct. Crossroads are not intersections. They're also thresholds.
That's one of my favorite words.
Threshold?
Yes. It's just so you can apply to so many things. So this is speaking my language.
Beautiful. I'm so happy to be here for you. So, honestly, we could go on and talk about cultures and crossroads beliefs because it applies to every single one. But I'm just going to offer up one more for the sake of today's story, and that's the role of crossroads in African religions. In conjure, root work, and hoodoo, which, fun fact, is really just the herbalism side of voodoo, the crossroads is not just symbolic, it's foundational. So its roots trace back to the Congo cosmogram from Central Africa, often called the Yawa cross. And this symbol maps the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and it's tied to the rising and setting of the sun. So the center point where those lines meet, the crossroads there, if you will, is where communication with spirits happen, and it's the intersection between the living and the ancestors.
This is so cool. Okay.
Right? I just thought it was where two roads came together, but no. But that belief specifically did not stay in Africa. And of course, we know that most African beliefs wound up in all these different places, especially because of slave trade, right?
Yep.
So it came to the United States exactly that way through the transatlantic slave trade. And archaeologists have even found cosmogram symbols on pottery made by enslaved Africans in places like, surprise, surprise, South Carolina. So the idea held that crossroads are not just physical spaces, but spiritual access points, places of passage and connection. So again, this threshold idea over and over again in each religion and culture. It's just sort of whether or not that was for good or evil, right, is kind of the perception of other people. There are parallels in West African traditions too. So among the Yoruba, the deity Ishu Elegba is tied to crossroads, and offerings are often left there. In hoodoo, the exact names didn't survive slavery, but the overall sort of concept did. So it's a spirit at the crossroads who can be petitioned, who sits at the intersection between worlds. And in Haitian voodoo, that role shows up specifically as Papa Legba, who is the gatekeeper and messenger to the spirit world. He, of course, has come up before. And really, ultimately, his role, though it's often misconstrued and showed very differently in media, like he is sort of the protector, especially of children. Like he's a good guy, but you know, there's plenty of shows and white people directed stuff that makes him just look like some scary creature.
Yeah.
But over time, that meaning shifted, especially as we come into more of American folklore, because the idea of going to crossroads at midnight to gain a skill or make a deal became really popular. And this specific sort of legend is often tied to Robert Johnson. Have you ever heard of this person?
It feels very familiar.
To be fair, sounds like a very common name. But the story says that he sold his soul to become a legendary blues guitarist.
Yes, I know that this, I don't know how I know this, but I
I
do.
might be able to tell you how you know this as we go on. So we'll see if I'm right.
Okay.
So the legend of Robert Johnson, I like when my notes do this. It actually wound up kind of taking me on some twists and turns beyond just what I also thought I knew. That's kind of our goal here. Jerry and I try to get beyond just the juicy stuff and get to the quote unquote real, potentially boring stuff.
Origin.
So Robert Johnson was born in Mississippi in 1911 into a pretty complicated and unsettled start. His mother, Julia, moved him between places and households. First, he was in Memphis, where he spent most of his childhood. But the good thing about being there was that he was exposed to so much music really early on and developed a foundation that really set him apart from blues musicians at this time, especially with Delta blues musicians, which was sort of the reigning style at that time.
Do we know what Delta blues is?
Mississippi Delta is an actual place. And so it's sort of the music coming out of that area.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So by his early teens, he was back in that Mississippi Delta, actually, living a more rural life, but continuing to sort of experiment with who he is. And this makes sense, I think, for any kid that's been sort of moved around, is like, what do I like? Where do I want to be?
Yeah.
And he even used different surnames depending on where he was. And he was really educated, especially for his circumstances. And he was already musically inclined. He played the harmonica and the jaw harp before turning very seriously to guitar. But during this whole time, his life is continuously marked by this sort of instability and loss. He got married young, and his first wife died in childbirth.
Oh no, that's devastating.
Well, and even more devastating is that some folks in the community actually framed that tragedy as punishment for him choosing blues music over a more respectable life. Yeah. And that idea, sort of tying his music to something supernatural already, starts to really take root here. Wow. So we can kind of mark it at that point. Musically, his turning point came through real people, not myth, and we can actually trace these things together, because he crossed paths with Son House, more on him in a second, who remembered him as a decent harmonica player, but a weak guitarist early on.
Okay.
Then Johnson's going to disappear for a stretch of time here momentarily, and when he comes back, he is this unbelievably gifted guitarist and musician.
Interesting.
So quickly, Son House is Eddie James' son, House Jr., and he was a seminal American Delta blues singer and guitarist, and he was very popular. He was renowned for this really intense, very emotive sound, and he was a major influence on a lot of musicians at this time, including Robert Johnson. And he actually combined what's described as preacher-like intensity with secular blues music.
Okay, maybe I could get down with that. It's like the opposite of Ethel Cain.
Yes, so he created classics such as Preachin' the Blues.
Okay.
We should link a playlist to this episode.
That would be cool. Yeah.
So going back to Robert Johnson and this transformation where suddenly he comes back and he's just unbelievable. The transformation in and of itself is often romanticized. However, again, as you and I like to do, let's take the sensationalism away for a second and talk about realistically what probably happened. He likely went and trained under Ike Zimmerman. And this is a guitarist known for practicing in graveyards at night.
Okay, so our kind of people is what I'm hearing.
Our kind of people, and not for any supernatural reason, only because it was literally quiet and uninterrupted.
Wow.
He was like, this is a good spot. Everyone's going to leave me alone. I can teach, I can practice, I can do whatever.
Oh, I bet that was such a vibe too. Can you imagine just showing
blues
up
in the graveyard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So for this time that he's away, these couple years, if that's true and he's having these years of uninterrupted, really focused practice, of course, you're going to come back and people are going to describe your talent as otherworldly.
Yeah, you're gonna get much better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As his playing improved, though, so did the legend. Because by the time people were telling his story, the idea that actually what had happened is he had gone to a crossroads and made a deal with the devil and sold his soul in exchange for being unbelievably talented. And it took hold. And even those around him really spoke about his talent in this way, which made it confusing for people later on to kind of distinguish, like, do we really think that happened?
Right.
Or are you just sort of going with it? Is it like tongue in cheek? And in truth, I mean, his life followed a very normal, if not sad, pattern where he had a lot of movement, a lot of loss. He had relationships and a pull toward music that looked different than other people. And by the early 1930s, he had settled briefly in Mississippi before leaving again to live as a musician, really fully committing to this path that would later define his legacy. And that's part of why so many people had seen him be sort of just okay and then also really incredible, because he was playing everywhere as much as he could. And it's going to give you this opportunity, right? Of like, gosh, the last time he was here, he was so, and now he's incredible. But, and this is why we're going to get into if this is maybe how you know some of this stuff. The Crossroads deal story around Robert Johnson actually didn't start with him. It was built over time, and the legend says that he specifically met the devil at a crossroads at midnight, handed over his guitar, and got it back with supernatural skill in exchange for his soul. Especially because he went on to write songs like Me and the Devil Blues, Crossroad Blues, Last Fair Deal Gone Down, If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day, Hellhound on My Trail. And for those of you not in the know, a hellhound in folklore is a supernatural, often malevolent, spectral dog, typically almost like werewolf-like, glowing red eyes or yellow eyes, incredibly strong, usually like uncharacteristically large.
Yeah.
And they usually stink like sulfur because they're said to come out of hell. And in some stories, they're really just guardians of the underworld or like a bad omen that someone's going to die. But most commonly, the idea of a demon dog or a hellhound is that they haunt graveyards and lonely roads, or they act as assistants to the devil to collect what's owed. So I'm just saying, it seems like he bought into.
I mean, why not roll with it? Run with it. Some pretty good it's like content. It's some pretty good.
It's like a brand.
Yeah,
he made a brand.
So. He did. He branded. Yeah.
He branded himself, and so I'll give you a little taste of Me and the Devil.
So it's hard to make a transition here, but basically what's happened is, for those of you listening, as Heather was playing this song, the camera cut out, she got booted off, and her recording equipment stopped working. So not saying it's because of the song, but kind of cool to think it might be. So we'll continue here in just a moment.
Okay, picking it back up. My cat broke my microphone. So I just had to send an email to Rode asking what we do about that. And we're going to finish this episode with a slightly different audio quality on my side, but we're almost done. So
great.
Ay.
Thanks for sticking in there.
Okay. So anyway, we were just listening to a little bit of music and just to get a feel for things. But here's the thing, and this is why I'm wondering if this story sounds familiar to you. This story actually traces back to Tommy Johnson, who claimed something similar years earlier. Over time, the details blended and eventually attached themselves to Robert Johnson, especially after his music was rediscovered decades later.
Okay.
And if you're thinking, these names sound really familiar, It could be because in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
This is it. This is it. Do you know this is one of my favorite movies?
Well, I had a feeling that you probably had seen it.
This is one of my This is it. Okay.
And
I
the
got
Crossroads myth shows up through a character named Tommy Johnson.
Yes.
Who claims he sold his soul to the devil to play guitar.
In the very beginning.
So he's played by Chris Thomas King and performs along the Soggy Bottom Boys. And they pulled from songs tied to artists like Skip James. So that soul-selling story, it's a tongue twister, is first told about Tommy Johnson by his brother Liddell in real life and was later documented in early blues research. But over time, the legend drifted and became attached to unrelated musician and main focus of today's episode, Robert Johnson instead.
Whoa.
But how? And so I started looking into it thinking that the confusion and the mix-up was maybe just because they have the same surname, and that's just sort of confusing by default, and maybe folks got it mixed up. But wouldn't you know, it's not that simple.
What happened, Heather?
What actually happened, Jerry, is that the story starts with Tommy Johnson. So Tommy tells multiple people, including his brother, that he sold his soul at a crossroads to gain guitar skills. He's telling people he did this.
That he did this. Okay, got it.
Yes. It's to the point that the story circulates locally. Like everybody is just sort of like, yep, you know, he did that thing. And is later documented by folklorists and blues historians. So it's set in stone. It's a concrete story that has been told by the source, right? But Robert Johnson has the much better narrative for the legend to attach to, because he was this average guitarist that didn't really blow people away. He disappears. He's probably hanging out in graveyards, playing music and practicing music. Son House even described that the shift he witnessed in him is almost unbelievable. And so, of course, that kind of transformation, instead of people just going like, that's so admirable, he really hunkered down and practiced. Instead, it's like, something spooky happened. Also, the legend didn't fully attach until after Robert Johnson's death.
What?
So scholars note the Crossroads myth around Robert Johnson largely took shape during his rediscovery in the 1960s, when white blues fans and writers were trying to interpret his life and music.
What?
And again, I told you what his song titles are. So it's not a stretch to be like, I mean, look, he's talking about it. He did it. So writers, interviews, and retellings, as you do, added dramatic elements. The midnight meeting, the crossroads location, even this idea of a large black figure. And this wasn't consistent early on, but as folklore and storytelling goes, right, every time it's told, it gets a little bit more embellished, a little bit more. And cultural overlap made this transfer really easy too, because both men were Delta blues musicians. Both men had the surname Johnson. They were tied to similar places and traditions, but more importantly, the idea of crossroads already existed in this African diasporic and Southern folklore. So the story didn't really need to be accurate because everyone telling it or being told is already like, I mean, it seems plausible. The story checks out. So the bottom line is that it wasn't just a matter of confusion. It moved because it just made for a better story, especially once people started looking back on him as this mysterious, almost otherworldly figure. And also, Tommy Johnson's songs are all regularly named blues songs. I looked them all up to see if, like, is he doing
like
it?
Hellhound? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just, you know, basic blues kind of songs. But even the people closest to the story didn't fully confirm it, even though they were like, yeah, it was pretty crazy. Because Son House definitely told versions that kind of fueled the story. Like, he wasn't going out of his way to stop the spread, but he never clearly backed the idea of a literal deal. Meanwhile, real life details got folded into myth, like Johnson practicing at night, like I said, in the graveyards. And the crossroads itself is just as slippery because multiple towns in Mississippi actually claim to be the site. and there's no clear answer. And this is so similar to the White Witch episode, right? Where it's like, I don't want to hurt any tourism, claim your Crossroads, but we don't know that it was any of those. Mm-mm. But I will say at its core, the legend says less about an actual deal and more about how people tried to explain something that felt really unexplainable. Mm-hmm. However, if the story is true at all, it's still easily fueled because there are some suspicious elements, namely the fact that our character today died at 27. Are you familiar with the 27 Club?
Oh, I'm familiar with the 27 Club.
Would you like to tell the people?
There are many, many, many famous musicians that have died at 27.
Mm-hmm. And it's not statistically more common than other ages, but it's weird because, like Jerry's saying, we have Brian Jones, Rolling Stones founder. We have Jimi Hendrix. We have Janis Joplin. We have Jim Morrison. We have Kurt Cobain. We have Amy Winehouse. We have even more than that. And they were all 27. They were all musicians. It's easy for people to go, that seems strange.
I don't know if this is like in the media. This is like a little weird tidbit that I've hung on to for a little while, is that I've had two separate people tell me that they thought they were going to die at 27. And I don't know if that's because of this or if it's because of, I don't know, you know. But anyways, I thought that was interesting. So maybe it's, I don't know. But it is a very interesting, for him to have died at 27 is notable.
I agree. Yes. But the important thing I think to remember in terms of staying a little bit more ethical here is that historically it's very clear that it just doesn't really add up. Also, very important to note is that his family really pushed back on this narrative. And accounts pointing to him learning under Ike Zimmerman and putting in years of practice because like, can you imagine going off and trying to hone your skill so much and people are like, yeah, he sold his soul to do it. While a fun tale, really a slap in the face for all that hard work.
Do we? And this feels like it's kind of just, it's gone, it's like named, unnamed here, is that this feels like it just has such a strong racial element to it. This just feels so racist as well to be like, oh yeah, you sold your soul to the devil. You didn't
no
actually
way could you just
do
be
all
good.
This like hard, like that you have this like incredible, amazing skill and you're just very good at your art and your craft.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting sort of blend of that too, right? Because you have, on the one hand, African culture very much going, yes, this makes sense.
Yeah.
But then you also do have the fact that it was mostly white folks that later were like, oh, obviously this is what happened and we're going to really push that. I'm not saying they started it or it was their fault, but it came mostly in the 60s when white people were discovering a lot of blues music and really honing in on that story instead of like, this music's really good. So again, just I think that's really important, is that if his family is saying, please don't say that, then we're going to not say it. And for any of you that are like, you just did a whole podcast episode about it. Yeah, but I'm saying that it's not true. So ultimately, the Crossroads story that we hear today, the devil, the deal, the midnight meeting, it's really just a lot of folklore layered on top of really ancient beliefs, like Jerry's saying, maybe sprinkled in with some racism. And at its core, the Crossroads in hoodoo was never about selling your soul. It was about access. It was about communication. And standing in this liminal space, this threshold between worlds, and I mean, talking to the ancestors. And so to turn it into, again, this thing of like evil and unwarranted success is just a little unfair.
So unfair.
And also worth noting, some of the folks in that 27 Club also were rumored to have sold their soul, including Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix. Eric Clapton didn't die at 27, but Jimi Hendrix. And it's just this idea that we see come up a lot, especially in like blues and rock and roll. So, but yeah.
Wow. This feels so relevant in that it parallels so many of our other stories in that same way.
Yeah.
It just feels like it just fits in so well with all the other ones. Good job.
Thank you.
Despite our...
Despite my broken USB port back here.
Yes, you all don't have any bumps or any crossroads in your listening. But we did take a pause and try to problem solve. But we made it back. We made it work. And just a little different of an episode today. But we'll be back with 2 fresh mics.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.